management consultant. He's a managing consultant, Femadi Vantage Group. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. As we always do every Tuesday, we acquaint you with the procedure of this program. At the appropriate time, you can get to join in the discussion in the studio. The various platforms will be on your screen. We advise you take a...
So when he came in and as a cabinet we were sworn in, we were given our marching orders. And we started off with the strategic implementation plan for the 2016 budget. This was a short term, 1 year. And basically, it was to try and reflate the economy from inception. Aspects of it, when you look at the document, you'll see the Presidential Committee on Ease of Doing Business. That we've been implementing for about 4 or 5 months. You will see there things that are reflected in the 2017 budget. You know, we intend to promote export promotion.
Virtually everybody, especially the National Assembly, believes as a lawyer he cannot do much in the economic field. But to be honest, he has shunned the devil. Once again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I have seen some few places where needs some amends. And that's, for instance, if you look at the area of the petroleum, where they want to make sure that
the speed and trajectory of the government after it was sworn in. The capital flight that followed, the delay in the appointment of ministers, the lack of clarity about state policy, the confusion within the ruling party itself, took confidence away from actors in the economy and impacted negatively. And with the consequent decline in the value of the naira, we found ourselves in 2016 a bit concerned that the document, good as it is, represents, if you like, a revised standard version of what we've had, diversification. Adesina spoke about it. In fact, at a point, we thought that even if you're walking around the street, a bag of rice will fall on you. He's been out. How do we is talking rice also? So that in all of this, I'm a little pained that, you know,
I've looked at the Economic Recovery Group plan. The government have tried to do what we've been saying as if we are reading literature, normal, as usual. But then, when it comes to implementation, it's never see the light of the day because the policy are not. You will see that we have short term, medium term, and long term. This rate will not allow them to achieve some of the well-articulated programs they have for the short term or the medium term and the long term. So let me stay step down for now.
We'll come back to that. Is that a factor? Is that a factor? Welcome him to this program. Let's welcome Tiliwa Adibaju, who's a financial expert. He joins us from our Lagos network studio. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Good evening, Cyril. How are you?
Yes, fine. Well, you've
of our revenues are used to service interest. And this sort of debt service ratios at 66% is clearly not sustainable. And we have a deficit now that is in excess of about 2.5 trillion. And those are the structures. But you need to be able to create the enabling environment to make sure all these things happen. So the success going forward eventually will be determined by the policies that the government put in place and to be able to tighten up their monetary policy, to improve fiscal policy, and get confidence restored.
increasing production. So we're targeting to get back to 2.2, and then within the plan period to get to 2.5 million barrels. So we're looking at making sure that we give the right policies in the petroleum sector. And one of the things that we did was to get out the
I want to look at this topic of economic recovery from different perspectives entirely. I don't believe that economy can be stimulated through austerity measures. I believe economy can be stimulated through increase in spending. And when you look at federal civil servants, for example, from 2016 to date, there is what they call salary cut. Most of federal government agencies were receiving less than what they are receiving in 2016. And I believe the majority of consumers that are consuming the goods in Nigeria are civil servants. Even if the producers produce goods, if the consumers did not buy those goods, they will just be dumped in the warehouses. So we are not getting anywhere. Now, if government wants to stimulate economy in the short term, they should pay all the entitlement of civil servants, including their promotion. I was promoted in 2000. I'm a civil servant. I was promoted in 2016. Luckily enough, I was promoted in 2016 again, 13 and 16. But up to this moment that I'm speaking to you, I do not receive the full benefit, full financial benefit of those promotions.
Fiscal policy is something that needs to be handled by both finance and budget. But today, we find that most of the items that we have problems with that is creating a foreign exchange problem in this country is created by the central bank. These 41 items that are banned from getting foreign exchange are those who are consuming all the foreign exchange in the parallel market and the euro change. And it's not right. Even if they cannot get what they want 100%, let them be within the system. They know that they are qualified. So there will be no panicking. If, by doing that alone, the foreign exchange will find its rightful place.
Right, we have another caller. This is a call coming in from Ghana, really. There's a David on the line from Ghana. David, if you can hear me, go ahead. Oh dear. Yes, just go ahead.
Okay. Please, I want to put some suggestion. You know, we are talking about economic growth. Okay. So, what I'm saying is that before all these things, there are some measures that have to be put in place. You know, when you look at all those Western world or Asian world in order to go.
Okay.
Our environment, businesses have shrunk by more than 60 and sometimes 80% because of what you call replacement cost. If I sell air conditioners, I needed to change probably 17 million to buy 50 air conditioners. With the exchange rate, by the time I finish, I can only buy 7. My business has dropped by over 60%. There's nothing I can do about it. So this matter of the progressive decline of the performance profile of all businesses is actually not being taken into account. Construction companies, retailers, etc. And also in an environment where you have a rent-seeking banking sector that doesn't do any real banking, does not provide funds that could drive development. Within all of this, in the document, then you have 66% for servicing, and at the level of getting the moral integrity to drive the process. Because it's not about economics, really. You're talking about a national growth plan, which will include the fact that this government has stayed long enough for it to pay attention to the entitlement of former governors. It doesn't seem to belong here, but it does. Oshiomhole was labor leader for as long as anybody can remember. He was leaving office and the entitlement approved by the State Assembly was 300 million for a house. You see, a national rebirth should not be retired on a document that talks about economic policies, where you have on record government expenditure and proof of disbursement for local production, but in terms of what will enter the market as a result, you will see nothing. That's the real worry, not the good intention of government. This document is well intended. The projection is that with this, Nigeria will move from where it is, dependent, importing everything, to where it can produce. But let's suppose all the money is available today. Everybody means well. You know, it's going to take at least 2 years to get things going at the local level. That's the truth of the matter. And so the delusional element of the projection should be pulled out. So we stand on terra firma at the level of realism.
To add something to what he has just said now, the federal government need to move from that thought of made in Nigeria. Let's start thinking like other developed countries, like India now. India is moving from make in China. That is to say, let us try and start making these things, producing them. So we move and start changing our orientation and thought from made in Nigeria to make in Nigeria.
Okay.
And also on the tax issue that the minister said, taxing individuals, corporate bodies, we not encourage investors into the country, or we in the private sectors. What I expect the federal government to do in terms of taxes is, let's have what I term as transaction tax. The federal government
Concerns about taxation, but maybe we should find out. Do you believe that the correct taxes are being paid by those who should pay those right taxes?
as you have in every economy, like you have all over the world, we have two issues in terms of taxes: tax evasion and tax avoidance, which are inevitable anyway.
What's the level of that here, you might ask?
The level.
Don't go there.
Can I say something on tax?
Sorry, Honorable Minister.
Can I
The
say
only
something
thing
on
I'll
taxes?
add to that is that probably is also time as part of a development plan to review what I can only call all of them development tax. That fund rests on tax, and so many other percentages taken out for these things. And the effect it has had on the Nigerian economy over the years is that it's created a situation where I, as State Fund, could come here, NTA has its budget duly approved for the year, and make further expenses that would probably give NTA 3 times its financial entitlement, some of them covering the things it had budgeted for. You know, when we're in the Ministry of Education, that's one of the things we discovered. There's a budget to procure VSAT, and then another agency comes to give it to you. You see, that double expenditure is a loophole that has created an industry within the last probably 25, 30 years, and it thrives. That's probably something to review. This one of, you create this agency, it warehouses taxes in order to develop a place. Nothing is happening the way it ought to.
All right, let's go back to Lagos.
All right. On this tax.
Yes, the
just to
tax,
say that.
because that's what we're still
Yes,
staying on.
say something on the tax. Because the idea of transaction taxes is something that's also being looked into. I just wanted to assure you. The idea of moving the tax collection from 6% to 15% is not suggesting any increase in actual tax level. It's just greater efficiency and effectiveness in tax collection, and also looking at alternatives such as the transaction tax that you speak about. We're actually looking at it as I speak.
Capital development side of things and investing in infrastructure and other key projects. Of course, we also have a deficit that we need to finance. So the issues of revenue are very critical. Revenue generation, revenue assurance, not only from the oil sector, but also non-oil. So taxation is a key non-oil generation driver that we're coming from a very low base. And if we can see these improvements in the next 2 or 3 years, it will make a significant impact on the fiscal financing for government.
All right, we've got Abdul Hakim calling in from Lagos. Abdul Hakim, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Please, I would like to ask about our financial stand.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Hello. Though I'm still an undergraduate and I'm a student. So this government to me, it seems like, though I believe in this government, but it's just becoming like a government of just grammar. So please do something on time. People are really suffering, please.
Well, we didn't quite get that. He said some form of tax. What?
This government is just government of grammar.
Oh, okay. All right.
Maybe I should now talk about the implementation.
Yes, that's what he's saying. But, well, issues are always raised about that and say there's no shortage of all the documents. And
Can I say something about implementation?
Yes, because
I
if you
think
go
I
through,
should say
you'll find that these are issues that have been articulated in other policy documents along the years.
we have not been short of good plans. I mean, as you said, I agree. I myself personally have been involved in other plans. I mean, there was the NEEDS program. I was then the chairman of the National Planning Committee of the Senate with the Obasanjo government. I also looked at the 7-point agenda. So I'm familiar with a lot of the development plans that cause is that we are this plan, under this plan, the presidency, we're setting up a special delivery unit in the presidency, because you need the clout of the president himself and the presidency sometimes to get people really moving. So there's a delivery unit that is going to be set up in the presidency. As we speak now, we're already looking at interviewing people for that. The third is that we're going to have task forces. There are 5 execution priorities. You have agriculture and food security. There'll be a task force on agriculture and food security. That task force will consist of not just the federal, state governments, and sub-task forces looking at rice, looking at sugar. Already we have a task force on rice, which involves governors of states, as well as, and it's chaired by His Excellency the Vice President himself, with the Minister of Agriculture there. So you'll have a task force on power, on energy and power. Right now we have one already on power that has come up with a power recovery plan. So we'll have that. We'll have one on transportation and we'll have one on industrialization. So we'll have task forces on all those. In addition to that, we will be having engagements with the private sector. We will break up the private sector into sectors. Take manufacturing.
Abuja here. Abiodun, are you still on the line? Abiodun?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
I want to commend the Honorable Minister, but my question is going to the man behind the Honorable Minister, because I was looking at this figure. I was part of the Chairman Committee on House of Environment on endangered species and deforestation. That means the man behind the minister, Minister Wendonsa. The question I want to ask is the committee that is shared, how effective the committee have related towards the deforestation of our forests, because now we are speaking on the economic recovery, and I know we can't be speaking on economic recovery and killing some business. So how have you worked on this, sir, and when are you implementing your policy? Thank you.
Right. I think there's a it's obvious
Did you get it?
no, I don't know. There's a bit. Okay.
You did.
Go, what
Okay.
is that?
You go ahead.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Mr. Abiodun. Well, already we have submitted our report to the Honorable Minister of Environment for implementation. And I believe if he is able to implement most of the recommendations successfully, a lot of our issues with the forestry will be addressed successfully. And obviously, the forest is one of the biggest area that we've not been looking at how best we can harness the resources. But if you leave it in the hands of presidency generally, you may regret what you've done in terms of all the actions. So don't rely on the presidency, but rely on the economic team. You will see progress.
Well, taking up on those, the matter of feedback. Also in the feedback, they should focus on impact, not record of expenditure. Last year, it was always distressing listening to the finance minister talking about how much they had disbursed. We've released this amount. It's scandalous in public communication in government. You're telling us, okay, let's suppose I want to talk about the Kaduna Rail. I say, oh, this government is very hardworking. It has spent 3 billion naira to build the rail to Kaduna. Whereas I can also tell you, this government is working and is concerned about the citizens. For instance, the person who comes to Kaduna and goes back, instead of spending 3,000, now spends 800. That means he has an extra so and so amount to play with. That means, do you get it? The human element in public communication. The government focuses too much on how, release it where? You say you release money, rice is going up, transport is going up, fuel is not available, and that's the alienation government nurtures without knowing that's what it's doing. But on the more substantive matter the minister raised about special units, for me personally, I'm a stickler for institutional integrity. And when functions of institutions of state are being balkanized and given out, seriously in nations that do not draw the bulk of their income from rent. That's why you say taxpayers' money. I pay tax for the state to work. That's why the man in England, the American will not forgive you for evasion. You're spending his money. We collect oil from, no, we don't collect. Somebody collects oil from the ground where we stand, declares what he likes, and then we collect money from it and spend. So that the crisis of tax integrity, if we could do a lot of work, and I believe what they want to do now is to block it further. So, and also, finally, public service. Ultimately, the Obasanjo government set up a one-shop stop that will give the government an idea of how the state is performing. Servicom. Everything ought to come from that place. What is Servicom doing? This government should set up a special whatever and either make it function or scrap it.
We'll take a short break at this point. When we return, we'll look at all the aspects of this growth plan, and hopefully we'll get in more of your calls. But stay with us on NTA Tuesday Live. We'll be back shortly.
Nigerians, our fearless officers and men of the Nigerian military are winning the war against Boko Haram. Today, all occupied territories have been recovered and Boko Haram has been degraded. Our affected brothers and sisters are getting their lives back. However, they are now after you and me. In our mosques, churches, schools, motor parks, markets, entertainment centers, and public gatherings.
Are our essence as a nation. Let us renew the spirit of patriotism and hope in our dear country. Do not take or give bribe. Be punctual always. No more African time. We can't expect to be global citizens and operate on African time. Join the queue. Insist that people are attended to on a first-come basis, no matter who they are or where they come from.
Nigeria, good people, great nation.
Make you report any crooked person, object or wakajube movement to police and security agent demo.
The security of our nation now work for all of us, plus including me and you.
Nigeria, make we unite against terrorism. Now, Federal Minister of Information and Culture bring on this message.
Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thanks for staying with us. It's the economic growth plan and just growth for development.
I think clearly there are two separate issues here, and I think let's take a look at the growth plan, for instance, which is growth as a percentage of measured by GDP growth. 7% GDP growth is actually very attainable because before the economy crashed in a spectacular manner over a 2-year period, we had achieved close to 8 to 8.5% growth in Nigeria before. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, Nigeria's growth was in that region. It was only in the last 2 years we saw growth plummet, GDP growth plummet from about 7% all the way down to about -2%. And right now we're still in negative growth territory. So that talks about GDP growth. When you talk about development, then you want to measure development by certain indices. For instance, how many megawatts of power are you generating? So if you take a look at Nigeria, which is the largest economy in Africa, you find out in terms of the development indices, in terms of power generation, you're taking a look at literacy rates, you're taking a look at other indices such as those sort of development indices. Compared to the size of our economy, we're lacking in terms of development of. It's a lack of understanding of the sort of things we're talking about here. And it's important that we connect this plan to the general people to be able to explain that eventually they will be able to get jobs that they can use to provide for themselves and their families.
Okay. All right, let's bring in Wale, who's calling in from Lagos as well. He's on the line from Lagos. Wale, hello.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Wale, go ahead.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Yes, please, I would like the Honorable Minister to notice one particular issue, the debt profile of the country. And I think that one would stop any development you have in mind. Hello?
Yes, go on.
The debt profile of the country.
Okay.
All right.
Well, that's it, straightforward.
Okay. Let me quickly answer that, and then I'll go to the inclusiveness, the development, the question about development. I think I had said that the answer and the plan here is to grow revenues. So once you grow revenues, then the debt is sustainable. So the issue is growing revenues, and we have a plan here to grow revenues in various ways. There's the immediate short term, which is to restructure some of our assets, such as the ICT, creative industries, and services. There is an initiative which is being promoted and driven by the Ministry of Communications and the Ministry of Investments. And that has to do, it's called the smart technology. So we want to increase internet access, have internet hubs, and train, people in the whole ICT technology. Put funding, in ICT technology, so that because this is the areas that we can create a lot of jobs and opportunities for young people. And ultimately, we want to use technology, we want to leapfrog what other countries are doing. Use technology to really drive innovation.
All right, let's bring in Coyote, who's calling in from Ondo, quickly. Coyote, go ahead, and then we'll return to Dr.
Hello, sir.
Yes, hello, Coyote, go ahead. Just turn down the volume of your TV.
Yeah, I've turned it on.
Good, go ahead now.
Hello, I want to speak about the tax. Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to speak about the tax. The tax for Nigeria, we doesn't use the tax to do anything in Nigeria. All our leaders are always deceiving us. They haven't told us the truth.
And we have to, many people are suffering in Nigeria. We have to tell our president, government to help us to have some relief to get everything down. Please, we are begging the government to do everything because people are suffering at Nigeria now. Thank you. God bless you too.
Okay.
140-page document. The government has no clear-cut policy statement and action on educating the citizenry
about the plan.
Okay. And how will government bring Nigerians into these programs? Since the projection is on the poor and the vulnerable, so there's need for them to make, at least let the minister let us know what is their plan, what is their take on how the poor and the vulnerable get to understand. We all here are understanding this. And then also, let me just take the minister up on this. Then, if you find in other country, National Planning Commission is domiciled under the presidency. But in Nigeria here is domiciled under the Ministry of Budget. So you find that the implementation and continuity of whatever economic recovery or growth plan we are having now will not be sustainable. Even if it's going to be sustainable, the percentage of good result we have will be limited.
Okay. Fine. So that's the minister.
Can I just respond immediately to that? I think it's a very good point. It's a very, very good point about...
and also, I want the minister to give us an idea of the cost. Sometimes you have plan, and when you have a plan without a cost, to me, it's not achievable.
Let me start with the question of getting this plan to Nigerians.
Okay.
I think the two of you both mentioned it, and we do have a plan for that.
Okay.
Not adding value. We will transform this economy. We cannot just wait and be consuming whatever we get from abroad. We should take pride in what we produce. We should look at the things that we can add. This is a simple message. We will reduce it into a form that people can relate to. And so that is the plan. So we'll bring it down to this. But the basic thing is really, when you wake up in the morning, you should ask yourself, all these God-given resources that we have, what can I, as an individual, what value can I add? And that is what we want to do.
Okay. Yes. Value addition.
Right.
In humiliated and decided not to do what they're doing, what you have there are criminals, and you cannot control it. So it's important we give a very good look at informal sector.
All right, now back to the phones from Ibadan. We have Precious calling in from Ibadan. Sorry? Cassius, I believe. Okay, Cassius.
Yes, Cassius is my name.
All right, Cassius, go ahead.
I want to look at the issue of taxation. Taxation, I think, is important for generating finance for government. But we'll go about it here. I don't think it's ideal. To help you to establish. There are other ways government can raise funds. Like government, this APC government, they actually have some good plans. But they talk and talk too much. We don't too many actions in place.
Okay.
Like diversification, agriculture is a good source of income. But if the way they talk about it, they go about it that way, I tell you the truth, we should have been getting some good dividends out of it. But they talk too much about it, we don't see the outcome. If we go into agriculture, we go into production, and we go into manufacturing, I think that will give us good source of income. You know, so that is my contribution. Thanks a lot.
Right, thank you very much.
I want to react to.
Yes.
I react to something. Two things. Very quick. Identify the centers of power and use them, and let's stop the usually elite thing. Come to the state capital, assemble a crowd of easily bored, important people. They sit down. These are not the people you want to talk to.
But identify influencers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, the government should look at it that it's going to be a private sector and public sector participation.
Okay.
And you look at the media, where you use the media have some films about this and pass the message, not just walkie documents.
The
like
media
that.
should report on projects. They know what to do.
Private sector's
All right,
participation.
we have a call
Very
coming in.
useful suggestions.
All right, we have a call coming in from Kaduna. Just go ahead and introduce yourself. Calling in from Kaduna. Get your contribution. The audio on your call is very poor indeed, so it's almost impossible to get what you're saying. We might just encourage you to call back if you can. And gentlemen, there's another aspect of this I want us to look at, and I want to start this with
Tilewa.
yeah, with Tilewa Adibaju. And this is all the time when plans are rolled out like this, we hear what the federal government has set about doing. But of course, it's not all the federal government that is Nigeria. We've got the states. And it said that if the states, the local governments do not key into these fine plans
that is focused on SMEs, the central bank has an intervention program. It's very important that we key this financing into an articulated program so that at least the agencies at the federal level are very well coordinated. If we get that coordination within the agencies at the federal level, especially the financing institutions, and all the other general implementation agencies, it becomes a lot easier for the states to begin to also key into this. And of course, the dialogue with the National Economic Council, where the governors meet at the federal level, I think will also be an important platform to be able to sell this document, to drill it down to the states. And because of the challenges of the economy today, I think the states are now getting very close to the federal government and to the various local governments. So really that is where the challenges are. Policy is very important, and of course the Senate President says also that they have about 11 economic policy bills that they want to pass to help revive the economy. So the National Assembly is also very important, also apart from the state government, so that the key policy changes that the planning ministry might want to push forward, or trade and investment or finance, should be supported by the National Assembly to enable us get some sort of cohesion and ensure that there's coordination, harmonization in the implementation. Once we have that, I think the state governments and the rest of the country will fall into line.
Right, Minister.
I'd like to add something to that. I thank Tilewa for the comments he made. It is true, correct, that the National Economic Council has been very effective. Meet every month, and under the leadership of His Excellency the Vice President, we've gotten not just the federal government that we cannot achieve these objectives. So just to emphasize that we are working very, very closely with the states. And when the plan was launched, the chairman of the Governors Forum, was there himself, and he made it clear. He made a commitment on behalf of the states that they were part of this plan, that they have been, we have had extensive discussions with them, and that they are going to key in, and they're going to make sure. So it is a national plan, and I believe that
Under the ease of business you talk about, how much is going to access to finance?
Yes, that is very important, and that is why the government is supporting a number of things. These special institutions, the new one, the Development Bank, which is targeting SMEs. So in addition to that, the Bank for Agriculture is being recapitalized. We're also putting additional money behind the Bank for Industry. The central bank has special lending schemes for farmers, the anchor borrowing. And all these are below at single-digit interest rates. Ultimately,
solutions in terms of power deliverables.
Can I answer that?
Well,
power, because it's so important.
Yes, very, very power is
Power is very important, which is what one of our execution priorities, power. Already the cabinet has just approved the power sector recovery plan, which is also indicated here. Our approach to power is that every segment of the chain has to be viable. So discos, distribution has to be viable, transmission, generation. Right now, they are not. So you're having a problem because the discos are not collected, and that is what we're doing with power.
Just, I mean, on the lighter note, as the minister was speaking, I was asking myself, how would he feel if tomorrow people brought placards to his office protesting against Gencos? That there's these people called Gencos, that they're probably not Nigerians, that they was taking power. Discos, Gencos, and so generation companies. Can we come down with it?
There's some
generating.
Well,
of course, I know, but
yes, a question has been put in by one of the viewers has to do with power, as you say, being key to this, and we're looking at this document, this policy, that's particularly as it applies to industrialization, and they're saying, what specifically is in here?
That's what I understand.
That's correct. Very well.
So, but the sooner we see it, the better. The sooner the better. But that's the plan I saw from the document.
There are very many issues, but we're determined to take them one by one and deal with them. And power is very important.
Okay, many issues, and you're determined, and that brings us to the question of the political will. As we begin to wind down this discussion, and then we'll start with the minister on this one and go around with all our guests. And the feeling is, yes, 2017 to 2020, it is expected that this fine document would have advanced a lot in addressing the issues here. But again, I say, by mid-2018, it's all about 2019. And the implementers, those who drive this this document, including the bureaucracy, would be looking towards 2019. How would you insulate that from this?
Indeed, the success of this plan is important for winning.
Point agenda. I never understood anything beyond the 3 points, but he said it was 7. Where is Jonathan's transformation agenda? This nation is not Ludo. Where if you left the board and another person comes in, we exchange it, we scatter it and start the seed. This is a nation, a human ecological system that must run on sustainable principles and templates. And now we've got this document. If the president returns, he's not likely to continue with it, for all I know. So the point I'm making being, let us stop embarrassing ourselves at the federal level by always coming up with documents. Nigerians are accustomed to not taking government documents of this nature seriously. Because when did Yar'Adua complete his 7-point agenda? It's a staff of the president, yes. You're correct. And also, he pounced on the minister. They say if you see somebody you feel you can beat up, you feel like fighting. He let those who took the decision to capture the man who's just put on the job.
All right. So, back to our Lagos Center, and as we're winding down, let's hear from you.
Cyril, I think what is important now is that we have this document.
Right.
It's better late than never. The bane of the government before was the inability to articulate and document their economic policy and direction. That is no longer the case. So we need to move forward. One of the key challenges within the what we call the discount windows, and the central bank needs to be able to show some direction in this by carrying out stress tests. Deutsche Bank, which is one of the largest banks in the world, failed stress test in America. But because we know, everybody in the international investment community knows what the condition of Deutsche Bank is and the sort of backing, there is confidence. So it is important that we fix the financial system to be able to deliver this plan, both the general banking system and, of course, the intervention agencies that we want to use to be able to drive this plan. Because without a proper financial structure and a financial system, the funding of these plans would be very difficult, and we can see failure. It is also important to focus some of these interventions. As the minister said, take a look at your rice task force, for instance. We understand, for instance, that Olam, for instance, has made an investment of $150 million in Nasarawa State of a 10,000-hectare rice farm, which can supply maybe about 10% of the capacity that is required for rice production, for rice demand in Nigeria. So invariably, what that means is that with $1.5 billion, we can satisfy the demand for rice in Nigeria by replicating 10 farms such as the one that Olam owns across the country.
A certain risk category and so on. So I agree that is some of the things that we need to do, and it's been identified here.
All right. And just on that note, we'll have to leave this discussion. We do hope that at some point in time we will, like other agencies, we're keeping an eye on the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ask the implementers to once again give us an insight into just how well we've done.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's 2017 already, and within the next 3 years or so, we might begin to see the benefits of this plan. But for this program, I'd like to say thank you to all our